Are Big 12 coaches being overlooked? Kalani Sitake, Kyle Whittingham, keep going down the list. Chris Kleiman, none of them make Brian Smith's list of the best recruiting head coaches in all of college football. Christian Rauh of Locked On Kansas State here to discuss just that. So let's pull up this list that our guy Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast put together. Kirby Smart, number one for the best recruiting. We're just talking recruiting head coaches in all of college football. Mario Cristobal, 2, followed by Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, James Franklin, Marcus Freeman, Hugh Freeze, Dabo Swinney, Fran Brown at Syracuse with an ACC representation over there, Lane Kiffin, Mike Elko, and Brent Venables, his top 12. Christian, is it blasphemy to not have a Big 12 coach on there in your view, or do they need to up the ante on the trail?
Well, I think they should change the title to this from not the top coaches from recruiting, but the most spending when it comes to recruiting. Because I think that's what comes hand in hand here is you get the amount of money to take care of whatever needs to be done. And that's where the case may be. But, even though I'd love to put Chris Kleiman from Kansas State up there, the fact that you don't have Texas Tech there after what we've seen this offseason, what they've spent. Now, I know that a lot of that's transfer portal, but that's bending over and bleeding into recruiting as well, Spencer. I think that's egregious. I really do think that at least you should have Texas Tech on that list. You see some things like Syracuse on there at the moment. That's probably one that really glares out to me and goes, are they supposed to be there? But the fact you don't have Texas Tech, you don't have BYU, and you don't have other teams in the Big 12, it's really weird. It's a really weird thing, and I think they missed the ball here, Brian. I think you did.
Right now in the 2026 recruiting rankings, and we're into the summer months at the very least, we've passed the stage of it's too early to draw any conclusions. Like, no, you can't draw final conclusions yet, but we've got some serious data points here. And by the way, you know which Big 12 team has been in the top 15 in the recruiting rankings according to 24/7 for the longest stretch of time, Christian? Can you, the Kansas State guy, guess who that is?
Is it Kansas State?
No, it's not. It's not. It's the Jayhawks of Kansas. Lance Leipold and company have been getting it done. I don't know how I don't know how sustainable it is, but they're in there. Arizona State's in the fold. I've talked about their recruiting for quite a while here on the show because they have immense potential on the trail. And as much as I like Kalani Sitake as a head coach and think that he had the potential to be included on this list, I think Kenny Dillingham is the biggest oversight. When you look at what has happened, by the way, recruiting encompasses the high school and transfer portal ranks in my view, because that's how rosters get put together nowadays. I think to not have Dillingham on the list with what he's done at ASU, the situation that he took over, I'm not saying there aren't other good and capable coaches on this list, but you have to think about what a coach has to work with at his particular school. Mike Elko and Brent Venables are both good coaches. Do I inherently think that they've shown they could do more with less from a recruiting and development standpoint like Kenny Dillingham can? I haven't seen that, Christian, because I saw the team pick last in the Big 12, go out and win it this past year. Meanwhile, Texas A&M was improved, but not winning a conference championship. Oklahoma actually took a step back in Brent Venables' third season. And the talent and recruiting has definitely been there for Oklahoma and Texas A&M, but the resource gap is substantial. I think Dillingham is the biggest oversight, personally.
No, that's a good point. And I probably just should also say that as well. The fact that I looked him over is maybe why Brian did it as well. And Dillingham's been in the news lately trying to put himself back on the map, put Arizona back on the map, making them be considered a blue
Arizona State. Don't leave out the state. Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils will have my head.
Did I say that?
You did.
It's okay. Yeah. I would hate it if someone left out the state in Kansas as well, as we mentioned earlier in this opportunity. So I apologize. But when I look at these recruiting rankings, how much does it matter that maybe one of these teams get like a 5-star? And we're talking 2026, like 1 5-star. You don't see a lot of 5-stars come to the Big 12. It doesn't mean they don't have great recruiting classes. When you go to the NFL draft and you go to these Big 12 conference games, they are great players. And they're players that stay in the NFL and stay in college football and have great things for years to come. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the Big 10 and the SEC. I understand where they're at when it comes to recruiting, and especially because of money. But the fact that you leave every single Big 12 program off this, and I'm still going to fight for Texas Tech, although On3 has them pretty low on their rankings. I'll still fight for BYU. You make a very good point for Arizona State there. Arizona State, make sure I say it for the second time the right way. But it doesn't. I think the 5-star thing's overrated. When you look at the recruiting thing, if you can get a 5-star guy, does that mean that you're a top recruiter? It shouldn't always mean that way. I think fit is way more important than talent, especially in the best conference in college football, the toughest college conference, and that's the Big 12. Parity from top to bottom.
Well, I disagree with you there. I am a stars matter crowd sort of guy. They do not mean or everything. They do not guarantee anything. I don't think it's a coincidence that over the last 10, 15 years, the programs that have had the best average recruiting classes are the ones that are at the top of the sport year in and year out. And I do think for the Big 12, Drake and I earlier on today's show were talking about the playoff and how they get teams in and competing and all that sort of stuff. I do think there needs to be the sort of investment in talent acquisition that you see at Texas Tech, that you see at BYU, that Dillingham is trying to do at Arizona State. It can't just be 3 programs. It doesn't need to just be 3 programs. I know the finances aren't exactly the same as they are in the Big Ten or the SEC, but I think one of the ways that in the years to come, you see more Big 12 teams in the playoff, you see them, garnering more respect nationally. And, there's plenty of brand bias that is out there, but brand bias is built on years and years of winning and stacking recruiting classes. And I think that for the Big 12, they've got to find a way to go out and not necessarily go out and land. They're only like 20-ish, I think, 5-star recruits, if that, in a given cycle. There aren't that many, but they've got to be able to stack top 25 classes, I think, as a conference year in and year out, and then have someone every now and then creep inside the top 10. Right now in 24/7's rankings, they've got them inside the top. They have 4 Big 12 teams inside the top 25. If that trend were to hold and you get a couple that are maybe even inside the top 15 when the year comes to a close, I do think that can help shift the perception of the conference. And we all know, whether you like it or not, the perception of your league and of your school matters a great deal, especially if we go to a 5+11 playoff format, which is essentially an extension of what we've been having, or what we just had in the 12-team era, where it's the 5 highest-ranked conference champs and the committee picks everybody else. Well, the committee's perception of your school is going to matter. And yes, recruiting rankings do indeed play a role, whether you like that or not.
Yeah, if we disagree or agree on anything, the one thing I think you and I can definitely agree on is exactly what you said at the end there. The bias and the thought process of what the committee is going to have based on your recruiting and your talent level, your program level, it's at an all-time high. And I think what we've seen from the past playoffs, these things do matter. And I think you're right there. The money is going to be a big deal. Will the 5-11, that potential new playoff format, change the way that money is changed? Maybe the fact that maybe 2 Big 12 teams can be in every single year, 2 or 3, not with the automatic qualifiers. That'll be yet to be determined. But the fact that they're still left off this list in a team like Syracuse, who's still building up, is on this, that one drives me nuts, Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, I respect Fran Brown a lot. I think he is one of the up-and-coming coaches in all of college football. Show me what he's done that Kenny Dillingham hasn't. On the trail, which is specifically what we're talking about here, and then by extension on the field as well. But again, the list, I'll throw it up one more time for the YouTube audience. This is top 12 recruiting head coaches and your ability to put together talent. I'm hard-pressed to see how Kenny Dillingham is not on this list, and I think there's some, I think Hugh Freeze is maybe slightly overvalued there, but that also might be the record perception creeping into my head. But no Big 12 coaches in there in the eyes of Brian Smith. We like Brian, but you know what? Like everybody, sometimes Brian just misses. Christian Rauh, Locked On Kansas State. Great as always, my man. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.